Green energy, Archie. At what cost? Let's discuss lithium, and let's discuss whether it really is as good as it's made out to be, or whether the disadvantages of it weigh out the advantages of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, climate change is a pretty big issue at the moment, and lithium is one of the main ways, one of the main materials used in batteries and a variety of other things that we need to become more efficient as a society.
I guess that's it. Mainly, moving to that green energy is such a huge step that we need to take now, and I feel like a major key part of that will be, over the next couple of years, lithium and lithium mining. Compare everything in the batteries, from the remote you use at home to the cars you drive around. So, for example, one electric car battery needs 8 kilograms of lithium. So as electric car markets rise and batteries for the markets for these batteries all around the world rise, demand will triple for the lithium by 2030. So
you're totally right. We've had a massive global increasing trend in the amount of lithium that we've been using. But let's discuss some context. So what is lithium and where does it come from generally?
So lithium, at its base, it's a metal, and it's used to create lithium-ion batteries that are used in, like I said, many electronics, from remotes to cars to anything that has a battery, really, anything using electricity.
And international infrastructure and stuff. So electricity grids, they've got real big ones, which is basically where they store the energy they create before it gets transmitted into the grid and then eventually into people's homes.
Yep. And for the current day, a really big sort of impact of these lithium-ion batteries have been in electric cars. So companies like Tesla and BYD more recently have been really driving up the demand for these lithium batteries. There's been an increase in demand for new electric vehicles.
A lot of the people who are advocating for climate change, and a lot of the scientists and things, carbon dioxide is obviously a very well known greenhouse gas, and a big part of advocating for climate change is moving to clean energy and clean cars, basically. Yeah. But clean cars are basically, at our current stage, the biggest users of lithium batteries.
Yeah.
Obviously, governments and stuff are using it in the grid, but most countries are still not mostly renewable. They're still mostly run by fossil fuels. So it is mostly in the electronic car industry where we're seeing most of these batteries.
And that's where the question for today lies, is that at its current state, the benefit that we gain from moving away from fossil fuels and cars, the way we've seen them over the past decades, even a couple of 100 years, is that worth the cost of, obviously there is a heavy environmental impact of mining and production.
Yeah, you mine fossil fuels, but we also mine lithium, so how much better really is it?
Exactly. So can we quantify the benefit for these new lithium-powered vehicles over their predecessors of fossil fuel-powered vehicles?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And lithium does have a big environmental cost. Obviously, the main advantage of lithium is that it is a mineral.
Yeah.
It's a mineral, which means there's no burning going on. There's no releasing of fossil fuels. There's no immediate greenhouse gases to use the actual resource. Obviously, there's third-party greenhouse gases. What I mean by that is there's the machinery you need to use to mine it, and there's obviously the environmental cost of you digging a giant hole.
100%.
So you're removing the trees, and that obviously will have an effect on greenhouse gas and things as well. But yeah, it's not. The thing with lithium mining is it's not quite as direct as fossil fuel usage. I think that's the main thing that's important to discuss.
And additionally, obviously now it's going to be quite a costly ordeal, but as it moves over and everything starts to transfer, once that fossil fuel usage is a lot reduced from what it is now, that is the end goal that we want to reach, and that will see a lot more environmental benefit than the cost that's going on at the moment in the changeover.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. It does raise the question, though, is that, obviously fossil fuels are non-renewable, but overall, they're still more renewable than an actual mineral.
Yep.
Lithium is completely non-renewable. We're taking it out of the earth. It doesn't regrow. It's not a plant.
Yeah.
So when we're taking it out of the earth, primarily at where we are at the moment, we're taking it from the surface levels. We're taking it from close to the surface, where it's cheap to extract with lower environmental cost. But the extent of the issues that are going to be associated with mining it in the future, we're not really sure what those issues are going to be, because as we start depleting all of our lithium from the surface and stuff like that, we're going to have to start going deeper.
Yeah.
We're going to have to start mining much bigger holes on much bigger levels, basically, and the negative externalities associated with the lithium mining are going to dramatically increase.
And let's have a look at that for a second, at the issues for the now, because obviously there's a heap down the track, but for the moment, let's have a look at it economically and look at where these issues are sort of stemming from in terms of these economic issues. So like lithium mining, as a lot of other mining, it's a common pool resource, which basically means that as it's just in the ground, anyone can extract it.
Anyone can use it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So companies can extract as much as they want, and like you were saying, can overuse it or deplete it.
There are
eventually.
limited regulations and stuff like
100%.
that, a bit like fish in the ocean.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy, I suppose, for those of you who don't really quite understand the really what common pool resources are. But yeah, they're resources that anybody can use, and there are not a lot of rules and regulations around how much people can use, and that really is what the problem stems from, really.
Yeah, and because of that creates a lot of negative externality across the market, but also across the ecosystem, as there's a lot of water overuse in that mining.
Yeah, because the machinery and stuff, as they go down,
be,
it has to be cooled, and there's all these other. Yeah, no,
exactly.
For sure. There's a lot of that's the thing with lithium mining, is there's a lot of these hidden negatives which people don't really take into account when they look at it. They go, well, we're not burning fossil fuels.
Yeah.
With the for energy, we're not burning the fossil fuels, so it's better for the environment. But when you look at it carefully, obviously that's true, and it is potentially better for the environment. But when you take into account all of these different things, it does beg the question: is it really better?
Yeah, and like following on from that, there's a couple of social externalities as well. Like there's impacts on Indigenous rights and things like that on that land. Obviously, like there's a lot of the places that these are like major countries like Chile and Australia. Like they've got a lot of this mining, so that it's obviously on people to reserve the rights of the Indigenous people as well. But also, like these places are very fragile ecosystems. Like there needs to be a balance kept, basically.
These communities that aren't necessarily taken into account when the companies are saying, oh, well, it's a common pool resource, let's just go make money, let's get this resource out of the ground.
100%.
They're not taking into account the fact that there's communities that are going to be harmed, and it's important. The private companies, they're profit maximizers. They're not going to be taking these sort of social externalities, as you call them, into account when they first go and look at the land and what they're going to mine and whatnot. So the government need to be putting in these rules and regulations, and mainly just these policies that reduce the negative externalities that are not thought of initially when planning.
Yeah. So in short, the private benefit for these companies is a lot, is sometimes outweighed by the social cost of the environment, these Indigenous rights and the overuse of resources. But let's go back to what you were talking about, those policies. So just off the top of your head, can you think of anything that could fix this sort of market failure that is being seen by the lithium market?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, there's a variety of different market failure that's going on here. There's the externalities associated with the greenhouse gases and what effect that's having on climate change. That's obviously a clear negative externality. That is something that's not originally considered.
Yep.
When producing or consuming the product.
Yep.
But then there's also the negative externalities, like we previously discussed, of Indigenous communities and things like this. So there's a lot of different things that the government's going to need to implement to work around these issues, basically, and remove them. Hopefully, that's obviously the plan. Economics isn't perfect, but that's the plan. So there should be first, I think, a strong planning process. A planning process is the most important thing. If it goes through, obviously it's bureaucratic, which means it's slow. There's a lot of red tape. There's things like that, but red tape is important because these things are decisions that need to be deliberated over. They need to be, environmental scientists need to look at it. They need to discuss impact. They need to discuss whether it's worth it, and they need to discuss, because these are the things that private companies are not going to be taking into account. They're the things that profit maximizers will try and work around. So the government do need to come in, as annoying as that may be, because it will slow things down. It's really important that they come in. So the planning is one. Obviously, there should be bans on certain areas. On where you can mine, and if it's indigenous, like if it's protected area for indigenous communities, that's a clear no-go. Like that should be made clear. And I mean, there's plenty of different ways. Like we could be mining lithium in a more eco-friendly way, basically. Like obviously it's difficult, but we could try and use more environmental friendly machinery and stuff like this, and there could be regulations put in place around how you mine and when you mine and these kind of things to have the minimum possible impact on the environment whilst getting the maximum possible gain for society. That's really the goal here.
And there was actually something that we didn't bring up, was that something needs to be sort of accounted for, is that over the last couple of years, because of that boom in especially EVs, there was a massive demand for lithium. So because of that, there was these companies mined up as much as they could and produced as much as they could in terms of lithium-ion batteries to try and account for a future boom, because they thought it would just keep going. But it's actually created oversupply in the market. So if there was a way that the government could...
Just quickly, do you mind if I jump in?
I
think it's important to note that oversupply is also because a lot of other solutions to these batteries are actually coming in. Like there are I've got some of the solutions here. There are sodium-ion batteries, which obviously don't require lithium. And there are solid-state batteries, flow batteries, and there's also surprisingly a lot of recycling going on. There's a lot of recycling the lithium in batteries. And so that was something that these businesses, when they were originally predicting this boom that you talk about, it's something that they weren't taking into account originally. So they thought this boom was going to happen, and then they thought, okay, well, the public is now realizing about these negative externalities, so they're going to try and make changes and get onto different solutions that don't require lithium. So that's also a reason why these numbers for lithium are declining, and it's mainly because the public is gaining more information on the effects of lithium and what it's doing to our society.
100%. And so from now on, in the sort of short term, I think while there is that oversaturation within the market, there should be some sort of quick and fast regulations just to make sure that the mining is maintained at a lower sort of level for a while that market stays the way it is. But obviously, I mean, there's always going to be some waste in that market. So eventually things will roll through, and
it could definitely
more will be needed at some point.
It could be worth the government for subsidising the research into some of these alternatives. That could be potentially a better avenue to take, because you're fixing the problem from the ground up instead of trying to regulate and ban and this and that and that. Obviously they would work and they would be good, but if you're looking for other solutions, that would just be completely removing the externality, because you're basically finding products that don't have externalities involved. So that could be a much better solution.
And I think that's the best idea, because obviously at the end of the day, lithium, like we sort of have been saying all the negatives about it, but like you said before, it's always going to be better than like coal mining and fossil fuels. So we shouldn't be punishing the companies who are trying to do the right thing and move to an EV
that's really
sort
true.
of solution.
Yeah.
I think it should always just be encouraged that they're moving away from that fossil fuel, and
There should be an encouraged
sustainable
transition because these companies are already doing the right thing, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it will be interesting to see what decisions are made and where the governments of, I mean, that's the other
Decide
thing,
to
it's
take the
hard
issue.
because it's a global issue, but
Yeah.
where governments choose
We
to
need
go with
collaboration.
it. Exactly.
Yeah. The real question is whether these lithium mines are just as environmentally damaging as other oil alternatives.
Yeah.
Considering the size and magnitude of the batteries necessary to keep up with demand and what alternatives exist, like we've discussed, and really whether these alternatives, whether we need to transition into them a bit more than we are currently.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming,
Awesome.
Archie.
Thank you too.
Had lots of fun.
It was awesome.